I mean, of course, it makes sense for some hygienic practices. If anything, most on this list will probably make sense to you, but they did what they could, I guess. I mean, how else did we get here? Hi, my name is Jessa. Please join me as we look together the top 10 hygienic practices in ancient history that makes no sense. Oh, and before we begin, in the last video I was in, the top 10 evil doctors performing disturbing experiments, I gave you guys a riddle. The riddle was, when you stop to look, you can always see me, but if you try to touch me, you can never feel me. Although you walk towards me, I remain the same distance from you. What am I? The answer is, drumroll please, horizon. Your next riddle will be at the end of this video. Anyways, let's get started. Number 10, bugs. Bugs were such an issue because it was common in the medieval period, particularly in poorer households, to line the floors with straw. This was mainly to keep the damp away, however it also provided a warm home for bugs and insects. Sometimes nice smelling flowers or herbs were also added to the straw in order to improve the smell of the room, but unfortunately this did nothing to prevent these bugs from breeding and spreading infections through and through. These straw floors caused a lot of problems where they were located in rooms where food was eaten, and food dropped onto the floor was often not cleaned up. Although dogs may have cleaned up some of the droppings, the rest of the food was for rodents and bacteria. These bugs were not only made for the homes and the floors of houses, but also bedding. Even some people's own bodies and hair made perfect places for them to live. Many people who lived in the Middle Ages were infected with lice, if that doesn't gross you out. When Mary, Queen of Scots, returned to England from France, she was a little offended that the men were still wearing their hats at the dinner table. It was then pointed out to the young queen that this was not a sign of disrespect to her, but a necessity. The men kept their hats on in order to prevent not only their long hair from touching the food, but from the head lice from falling into their plates. That's so gross. Number 9, soaps. It's nasty. Number 9, soaps. Some of the wealthiest people in the medieval period may have had access to clean water, though the servants were also called water carriers as they would bring them in to these wealthy people. These were the people that would bring fresh water to the homes for individuals to bathe. If you were poor, as a majority of the people in the period were, you would also have to travel to the nearest river to collect clean water. Although we often stereotype them as incredibly dirty, they were actually very clean back in the day. Soap was actually invented in the ancient Babylonians as early as 2800 BC, and archaeologists have found remains of what they believe to be soap in clay cylinders found at historic sites. Some of these containers had inscriptions like fats boiled in ashes, which was actually a common way of making soap. Egyptians were also said to have bathed regularly, as noted in ancient papyruses found by archaeologists, and this was a medical text produced around 1500 BC, which contained details on how to combine animal and vegetable oils with salt to make soap. This soap was not only used for washing, but also treating skin conditions. The Romans, like the Greeks, also understood that dirt was causing diseases, and they were famous for building aqueducts to supply their towns with clean water. They also built public baths as well as cold and hot rooms. Number 8, dental. Although in ancient China they would use horsehair or even pig hair to make bristles into toothbrushes, it wasn't until the end of the 17th century toothbrushes were actually introduced to England. Prior to this, there was an evidence that people used toothpicks, however most people remained negligent when it came to keeping on top of their oral hygiene. When cavities are formed, they develop decay in one's tooth that appears as holes, and in these times they call it toothworms, thinking that there might be tiny little worms digging holes into one's teeth. What this indicates to historians is that people in history were concerned with oral hygiene. This is discerned from the simple fact that it was included in texts on general health. Although little was done in terms of preventative measures, some civilizations accidentally and unknowingly improved their dental hygiene. Skeletons of Roman people who resided in Rome showed that they had healthier diets than the rest of the people living in the Roman Empire, which means their teeth were preserved better. Number 7, ancient cosmetics. The ancient Egyptians in particular were known for their good hygiene. They were, as we have seen, bathed frequently and even wore makeup. The ancient Greeks had a similar reputation and emphasized the benefits of a healthy diet. Egyptian cosmetics and toiletry sets actually included a tube for the eye, cosmetic kohl, a razor, tweezers, a whetstone, and a mirror. As far as back as the ancient Roman period, women were said to use razors. There, they would also have been found tweezers, stones, as well as creams which were used to remove hair. In Tudor England, it was said that people cared about their appearances, and so people took into carrying little glass or steel mirrors with them, and also carried tweezers as well as combs, ear scoops, and bone manicure sets. There's evidence that people have been shaving since the early days of man, and it is believed that they had used sharpened rocks to scrape away facial hair, and some may have actually removed facial hair by plucking it. Number 6, toilets. An obvious place to begin when discussing the hygiene practices of our ancestors is with the toilet habits. It was not uncommon for medieval houses to be equipped with closet-like rooms or nooks where people could go and relieve themselves in chamber pots. Some of the richest in the medieval period had earlier forms of pipework, which would be transport dirty water and human waste out. Despite these early versions of indoor toilets, people did not always feel inclined to use them. Some records even show that people would do their business at their friend's house in a very dark corner. Nice. Even with these times, sometimes you can't even wipe your butt yourself, so you'd hire someone else to do it. Like his personal butt wiper, the groom of stool was a position in the royal household in charge of cleaning, you guessed it, the king's butt. They also had to make sure that the booty was clean and dry, and so they had to wipe down his buttocks with a sponge or a wet nurse and just be a glorified butt washer. They were also responsible for helping him urinate and defecate by providing a wash basin, or for them to just use a regular old pot. Number 5. Eyebrows. We know in ancient Egypt they were obsessed with their cats, and it's true when a beloved house pet dies, they would shave their eyebrows to show mourning. Unsure why the eyebrows specifically, but why not? But in some parts of the time when it comes to your eyebrows, it was essential to look good, as eyebrows help form facial expressions and emotions, as well as aesthetics to help form your face. But if your eyebrows did not look fashionable, they were masked by tiny pieces of skin from mice. Although this could have been a satire article used on women and their beauty practices in the 17th and 18th century, there were no tips for applications or storage of mouse skin eyebrows in beauty manuals, but if there was, I don't think they'd publicly admit it. But it would make more sense as a form of critical statement on women's beauty in the 18th century, as they would make fun of the level of aggression one would take to look beautiful. But there's still more research needed to be done. Number 4. Lead foundation. It wasn't a surprise when it comes to cosmetics. As a whole, it would take some time before we figured out the right and safe way to ensure beauty doesn't have any long-lasting physical effects. But back in the day, they wanted to experiment and use whatever they could to reduce the blemishes that come with hormones and age. Queen Elizabeth I caked on thick makeup to the extent that it would almost look clown-like in order to hide her smallpox scars. Priests would tell women not to wear makeup because vanity was a sin. However, if a woman was sick and dying, wearing rouge to mask her illness was acceptable. Ceruse was the foundation makeup of choice for both men and women, and gave the most famous smooth pale look. However, it contained lead that seeped into the body through the skin, leading to poisoning. This makeup also tended to crack and had a very strong odor. Number 3. Balding. If you suffer from genetics like balding, maybe some methods of this era can help you. A 17th century publication by Peter Levins gives clear instructions to men on how to cure baldness and thinning hair by making the following mixture: a strong alkaline solution containing potassium salts, and chicken droppings to be placed on the area to be treated. In addition, if men wanted to remove unwanted hair from any area of the body, they should make a paste containing eggs, strong vinegar, and cat dung. Once beaten into a paste, this should be placed on the areas where the hair should be removed. I mean, maybe this does help you out, but after going through this suggestion, I don't think you might have the ingredients, let alone use them. I do know now that they do use microblading or tattooing hair that makes it look like hair follicles, so maybe use that. Or just shave it all off. But in the medieval times, having hair was considered a symbol of power, but if you did shave your hair, this was a huge sign of humility. Monks would shave their heads, only leaving a narrow strip of hair, so it might look healthier, or so it might be a look either way, just as long as you got your beard. Beards were seen as a sign of honor, and if one man touched another man's beard, this was enough as an insult to challenge them to a duel of death. A lot of rules with hair. Speaking of hair, knowing bugs and all that were such an issue, in ancient Egypt they would shave their heads not just because of the bugs and lice, but because it was relatively hot, so it makes sense. But to the French, especially the royalty, they never actually cut their hair. There's a story originating from the 6th century in Paris, France, about two princes who were going to descend the throne. They were kidnapped, and the queen consort was given two choices: allow her grandson's hair to be cut or let him die with his luscious hair intact. She chose the sword over the scissors. Even during the medieval period, commoners only washed their hair on Saturdays, as this was believed that you should wait until the end of the work week to wash off all the sweat and dirt. Now it's more suggested that you wash your hair every day or every other hair depending on the texture of your hair. But interestingly enough, with hair in mind, as well as beauty standards, during the Middle Ages, the ideal woman had big hips, small perky boobs, and a large forehead. Since big foreheads were all the rage, women would actually pluck their foreheads in order to get a higher hairline. The goal was to make their face look perfectly oval shaped, so if you got a big old forehead, you gotta let that baby shine. Number 1. Illnesses. Of course, when it comes to hygienics, we also gotta talk about what they did when one ended up sick, with the many trial and errors. In some cases, like for our modern days, it's recommended that we stay home for 2 weeks. In the 14th century, during the era of the Black Death, travelers arriving in port would have to wait on their ships for 30 days isolation period. They later realized the incubation period was actually longer, so they raised to 40. The word quarantine actually comes from the term 40 days. This disease formed sores called bulbuses all over the victims' bodies, alongside with aches and fevers and exhaustion. It poisoned the bloodstream and eventually led to their death. They would also hire cat ratchers to kill rats, as they were also known to carry the ticks that would pass along the diseases. Cat ratchers would be used long-handled trays or baskets to scoop up the rodents before they could escape, and would also be armed with clubs or sticks just in case they were attacked. They would also kill the rats by bashing and stomping on their heads and then collect them into a sack. So, what was your favorite on the list? Did you learn anything today? Who knows? Let me know. Alright, for your next riddle, are you ready? What are 2 things you can never eat for breakfast? Be sure to put your answer in the comments below and I'll reveal the answer in the next video. The top 10 sinister rituals from the Victorian era you can't unlearn. That's all for today. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jessa. Be sure to like and subscribe and I'll see your beautiful faces in the next one. Bye!